Michelle Missler, welcome to the Aging in Grace podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for making the time. And I know you're a busy person. You are the president and CEO of the American Association Service Coordinators.
That is correct.
And I can only guess how busy that job is. But before we talk about where you are today, let's go back to let's go to memory lane 20 years ago. When you were in the front line. That's what I love about
Mhm.
your career is you
Yeah.
started in the trenches, and so you know exactly what service coordinators go through, at least what they went through then. I'm sure you know, since you've stayed in the space all this time, you know how they're going through what they're going through now. But tell me about that the beginning of your career, like how did
Mhm.
you get into this space? And most crucially, to be honest, is a lot of folks they get in and then they just get burned out and they leave, but you stayed the course and in that
Mhm.
way. So tell me about how you got in and how you know what passion kept you in the difficult, actually. I think it's a difficult space, right, to do the job that you guys or the you know the social coordinators do in senior living. So tell me the story,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Oh, thank you for asking. From a young age, I knew that working with the gerontology program, the older population was something that I was driven to do. It's my calling. So I went to college and got a degree in social work and a minor in gerontology. Really thought for sure that I would become a social worker in a nursing home. That's what I thought was going to be my calling. And when I decided I wanted to move to Columbus, Ohio, I applied to all the nursing homes and got nothing, no responses. So I did get a response from an organization for a service coordinator position. And being 22, 23 years old, I didn't really know what that position meant and what that job would be. So long story short, I accepted the position, moved to Columbus, and that's what really started my journey. My journey not only in the world of helping older adults, but really understanding the dignity of aging in place in community and how you want to age. And it really charted the course of my career. So, working as a service coordinator, I was able to build lasting relationships with about 100 individuals living in affordable housing
Mm,
that were supported by HUD. So they're lower income individuals, primarily living on their Social Security, sometimes a small pension. And they needed connected to those resources to be able to maintain that housing. So
mm,
I learned a lot that first year as a service coordinator, not only about the resources within my community and the importance of connecting them, things I never learned about in college, let's be honest. But you jump in and you learn the job as you go, and it was it was eye-opening to me that there was this whole other arm of aging that I didn't even understand at that point in my career or in my life. In my mind, the way that we aged in America was, you lived in your home, and then once you got to a certain age, you moved into a nursing home, and that's where you finished your life. The reality is much different than that. And we're seeing a massive shift. We have been for the last few decades where individuals desire to age in place. And that aging in place may not be your, family home that you raised your family in.
mm,
Oftentimes it's about downsizing and moving to um, a smaller home to maintain, but also ensuring that you have those resources to be able to stay there. And so we see a complete change in society today in America, how we want to age. And so that first year of my career was really eye-opening that there's an entirely different way for us to think about aging and for us to honor those who are aging, and recognizing that how we all choose to set ourselves up for retirement, for aging, in our early years impacts how we are able to age in our later years. But there's a lack of knowledge and understanding of that preparation. that causes folks to kind of fall within this middle ground. And the work that I did as a service coordinator and that I now support service coordinators doing is really helping that middle ground of individuals who are still aging within community and need those additional supports to maintain that independent independence, I guess I would say. So.
Yeah, wonderful. So, tell me, what has changed dramatically, if anything has changed dramatically, in terms of being a service coordinator back in 2003, 2004, 2005, and now? Um, what has changed in the job, if anything?
I think knowledge, obviously, we
Mm,
learn more, right? As a society, we understand where there's gaps in needs. Um, as a young service coordinator, my focus was really about ensuring that those 100 residents, 80 residents that I was supporting had those services, right? And so
mm,
understanding community resources, understanding the state Medicaid system, the Medicare system. A lot of the residents were dually eligible. So for me, the learning was there. As I've grown in my career and now kind of am able to sit at the 50,000-foot view and look down, I recognize not only are those needs still absolutely imperative, but the reality is that those services, and over time, this has changed in my opinion, not caught up the way it needs to.
mm,
Our systems, our federal systems, our state systems are still primarily built to support a nursing home population
mm,
that's aging. So the reimbursements and the support that someone may need to have in-home care doesn't match the way the funding and the programmatic efforts are at the federal level to be able to ensure that these individuals can stay within their homes safely with the supports and services that they need. So, the reimbursements exist if I go to a nursing home today. Medicare, Medicaid will pick up, a lot of that care. But has it matched that level of funding for in-home care? That's still being built and still something that is lacking as it relates to the actual need. And it doesn't match the preference. The preference is about 91% of individuals, and don't quote me on that, that's an older statistic, but I'm sure it's still around there, desire to age in place. That means in their community in some way, shape, or form, and not go to an institutional level of care. So have our programs and support benefits matched that desire of how people choose to age in America? And I think the answer is still no, we're not there yet. I think we're making progress, but it's not where it needs to be. So that's the one big thing. We've seen a lot of really great community-based services that have, continued to grow over time, meals, all of those things that service coordinators are connecting individuals with, meals, transportation, things of that nature. But one of the biggest changes that I have seen in my career and that I've learned a lot about and I'm very passionate about are the social determinants of health. So
mm,
that language has been socialized a lot during my time in my career. And even when I stepped away from service coordination and affordable housing, what I learned was everything service coordinators are doing is supporting social determinants of health.
what does that
So when
mean? Sorry. Yeah.
so those main needs, the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have housing, we have food, we have water, all of those main needs, service coordinators are ensuring
Mm,
day in and day out that the residents living in HUD affordable housing
mm,
have those needs met, right? They're making sure they have food, they're making sure that they maintain their housing, right? They don't get evicted. They're making sure that they have the transportation that they need to get to the medical care that they require, all of those things. So when the healthcare world really started talking about social determinants of health, and that's a massive impact to somebody's overall
yeah.
quality of health, I was sitting there saying, well, that's what service coordinators in all social services have been doing for decades,
De
right?
facto,
We're
right?
addressing those. Hmm.
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And so how do you create that understanding in the healthcare
Mm,
world that there are already folks out there doing it and let's not recreate has been a big push of mine throughout my career. to try, and it will continue to be until we figure this out, right? How do we all work collectively together in a collective impact kind of way, meaning we all have the same goal. Let's see good health outcomes for everyone, regardless if you're in the healthcare world or in the social services world. We all have the same common goal. How do we work together um, cohesively versus in silos where the results may not be as good? We have people who are over supported in not coordinated ways.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's a big thing. And then the final thing I would say is the lack of affordable housing. So,
Mm.
when I first started as a service coordinator in 2003, I can't tell you what the need was for affordable housing. But what I can tell you today is that in Central Ohio alone, I know that we're over, 50,000 units that are needed, right? The entire nation is in a massive need of affordable housing. So we see apartment complexes going up, we see buildings going up, but are they affordable? And are we thinking about those individuals who may be only living on their Social Security benefit
Yeah.
and may not be able to afford a market rate apartment or the taxes of their home, right, as those continue to go up? So, are we really thinking about the future as it relates to housing needs for those of us who are all aging? And are we thinking about the overall impact to our systems, meaning Medicaid, Medicare? If folks don't have affordable housing opportunities, then they are forced to move into an institutionalized setting,
Which is
which
expensive.
then costs our government way more money, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It feels like there's this sort of this weakness in our system where we don't do a lot to prevent, and then we spend a lot to fix. At
mhm,
every level of healthcare, it feels to me, right? So it
mhm,
just why do we need to wait until I have to have an operation before the doctor tells me,
yeah,
well, this is what you should have done, as opposed to
mhm,
on a regular basis, like indoctrinated in, so to speak, the way we. I think I know the answer partly because there's no money in that really, right? But go on.
mhm,
What are your thoughts? I mean, probably that's even more urgent when it comes to senior living because, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 years, shaved off, having to go
mhm,
to intensive, like, we call that senior nursing home, right? That
mhm,
could save a whole lot of money, right?
mhm.
So prevention, in other words. What
Yes.
are your thoughts? Do you think that's the case that we
Oh,
will?
absolutely. So that's another piece that's changed since early days of service coordination. So when I was first trained to be a service coordinator, it was kind of sit back and wait for
Mm,
residents to come to you.
mm,
We could get into the generational differences and all of those different
sure.
things. So the greatest generation that was aging at that point and living in our housing, they were more of the mindset of I'm not gonna bother you. I don't want to ask you for anything. You're busy. But what's transitioned and what, a big part of my leadership in service coordination in general has been is really this proactive model. So recognizing that if there's 100 residents living in your building, you should know and have a relationship with all
Mm,
100 of them,
mm,
right? And we should be asking questions that are going to help us not predict because you can't predict health crises, right? But you can predict what needs may be arising. So if you're asking someone there, if they've had falls, if they have certain health challenges, right? If they have certain chronic conditions, then can you get supports in there to be more preventative, right? Are we checking somebody's blood sugar? Are we having somebody come in for all of the diabetic individuals and do blood pressure and blood sugar checks if somebody has high blood pressure, right? And so service coordinators are instrumental in understanding that entire population, what their needs are, and then a big piece of that now is that not only do we know them all, we're trying to ensure that we know kind of what their challenges are, but then we're being strategic about who we're partnering with to
mm,
come in and provide supports long before it becomes a crisis. So if I am not living in HUD affordable housing and I don't have a service coordinator and I have diabetes,
mm,
but I'm trying to determine, do I pay my rent? Do I buy food this month or do I buy my insulin, right? Those are my three choices. what am I going to do? Well, I need to keep a roof over my head, right? I'm
Hmm.
hungry. I need to eat. My insulin's a thing that's going to fall to the wayside.
Hmm.
So, in a service coordinator affordable housing model, we've got a roof over their head that's affordable. And then we've got a service coordinator who's helping support get that diabetes, checked and making sure that they're getting to their doctor's appointments so that that health outcome they're coordinating the transportation, they're potentially bringing in healthy food choices, and they're making partnerships to have someone come and check blood sugar for those individuals who might have diabetes. All of those wraparound supports are potentially preventing an emergency room visit, right? Because my blood sugar is out of control, a potential stroke. But how do you create a cost value to that of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
What if this would have happened? We don't know what would happen if we don't do these things. So oftentimes we struggle with like creating that exact figure of what we're saving the government or the health insurers or whomever it might be, because we have these people in positions. But what we know is that without a service coordinator, we would see much higher costs and much worse health outcomes and
Hmm.
potentially, death.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really, really an incredible model.
Yeah. And so you guys work closely with HUD. Um,
Yes, yes, have to.
I
Hmm.
think they do training through you as an organization, right? They train certain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 HUD has required trainings for all service coordinators, so we are the association that provides that. One of the
Yeah.
groups, the largest one that provides that training.
So it would seem to me that the CFO of HUD, for example, right, who cares a lot about money, right,
Hmm.
very receptive to these kind of strategic engagements with you guys. You guys are in the field. You understand what it means beyond an abstract concept, how to save money for the government, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So are there these conversations where you're like, we know, let us tell you how you can cut cost or you can make the most out of the money that you have. So instead of using it for emergency, we can use it to build more housing or whatever, subsidize more
Hmm.
folks. Do you have those conversations with
Well, yes, at any time we would have that conversation.
yeah.
Here's the challenge. The example that I gave you earlier about the silos. We've got
Mm,
healthcare, we've got housing,
mm,
we've got the insurer, right? We're all in our own silo and we're all doing great work individually. But when you think about the collective impact,
mm,
we're all working towards that common goal. But if we're not all in the same room saying this is the common goal, and
mm,
we're all going to leave our personal agendas to the wayside and come to the table to determine what the common goal is, then we don't really make progress. And the same thing happens at the federal level. So you've got CMS, you've got HUD, you've got all of these different federal entities that are working towards their own individual agendas, but do they all come together to say, hey, guess what? We are saving you, CMS, a lot of money because we're keeping people housed. The
yeah.
reality is that's a really strategic conversation for entities that are very goal focused on their own agendas. Does that make sense? To say that
Yeah.
the most,
Yeah.
I'm trying
Yeah.
to say it the
I was
most
just I was just
appropriate way.
thinking, no, that
But
makes sense.
collectively, yeah, we need to be able to do this.
Right, right. I was just thinking in terms of, let's say you are in a very powerful position in terms of being able to get the ear, hopefully, of somebody, within the
Hmm.
CFO's team, and have a
Hmm.
sharp edge of entry that says, hey, let's talk about how can we save you money. In
Yeah.
any case, I mean, I'm probably simplifying things, um, but you guys have so much information that is real, as opposed to folks who are sitting
Mhm.
in DC, in government buildings,
Mhm.
doing spreadsheets and reading reports and writing reports. You guys have like hard facts. So I'm hoping, right, that you guys have a lot more influence than folks who are just trying to, push paper with their pencil.
Yeah, it's an interesting space to be in because since the inception of our organization back in 1999, our biggest advocacy goal has been to increase the number of service coordinators, right? To increase the funding of service coordinators. So back in the late 90s, when this program first started, it started through a demonstration project through our Robert Woods Foundation. And the first funding of service coordinators and the first members that Ask had, we had about 100 members. Today we're over 4,000 members.
Wow.
So we feel like we have been extremely successful in getting more service coordinators in communities. The reality is that there's a lot of challenges with that, right? There's still thousands of properties that don't have a service coordinator.
Mm, mm,
There's still, and today we see affordable housing models look different. So we don't see as much funding for new projects coming from HUD. So that HUD affordable housing model is becoming smaller and smaller. The
mm,
existing projects remain, but what we're starting to see now is more tax credits being built, which is outside of the HUD model. So it's not even under the HUD umbrella. Tax credits are projects that are developed by affordable housing owners. And rather than having a HUD subsidy like HUD projects have, they are able to offer a reduced rent. So it's more affordable than the market rate. So let's say instead of paying $2,000, you might pay $1,500 and you have to qualify based on your income to move there. The reality of that program, which is what's gaining steam right now when we talk
mm,
about affordable housing,
mhm,
is that there's not a lot of wiggle room with these budgets. And so ensuring that service coordination or services are funded within those projects is more difficult because the return on the investment of providing those services doesn't directly impact the property,
mm.
right? As much
Mm.
as we're reducing
See,
the number of people who have to turn units, right? How many people move out because they can't maintain housing. But the real impact of services happens to the healthcare entity or
right.
the insurer. And so HUD's not even involved in that
I
type of a
see.
program, and
I
that's
see.
what we're seeing more and more. So our new challenge is to talk to those developers to say, hey, it is an imperative investment to put a service coordinator. If you're having a property manager and a maintenance person, a service coordinator also needs to be there, and you should invest in that. Um, and then also ensuring that that person has the support to do the job of a service coordinator in a HUD funded building. So that's really the new challenge. And in my mind, where I look at, again, from the 50,000 foot view, is there should be abilities for us to partner with healthcare in those moments to say, hey, guess what? There's 100 people who are of lower income living in this one place, and they all will potentially have poor health outcomes if we don't do something to support them, and this model works. How do we, are you willing to fund this, right? The challenge lies in the fact that not everybody chooses the same insurance provider. Not everybody has the same
Right.
type of, so those are more of the partnership challenges that we're seeing today, even beyond the HUD, what you talked about earlier, right? Like, how do we,
Yeah,
HUD sees the value in this program. They continue to invest in
sure.
it, they continue to increase the investment in it. At some point, I think what we're going to see and what I think already happens is that HUD looks at the program and says this is a valuable asset, but how far will we take the funding and who's picking up the tab after us? Because is it HUD's responsibility forever? That's a good question.
So how would you convince a non-HUD entity to hire a service? What are your main, beyond obviously
Mhm.
the soft argument, it's good for it's good for the residents and so forth. These guys are business people, and so they're always looking
Yeah.
for the bottom line. So
Yeah.
how would you make that bottom line argument?
So a lot of it is, reducing those hospital admissions, reducing those ER visits is something we've tracked in the past. Ensuring that folks get to their doctor's appointments. So a lot of times, especially when the Affordable Care Act came out, we saw a lot of new measures that were being documented. Do people get their vaccinations? Do people do their primary care visits? Are people reducing their number of hospital visits, unplanned or emergency room visits? All of those things, service coordinators are imperative in um, resolving. Meaning, if I don't have transportation to get to the doctor to have my annual physical, then I'm not going to go if my doctor doesn't see me annually. So the cost savings is difficult to discern
Mm.
unless it doesn't happen, right? And so one of the biggest things that we are constantly hoping to be able to paint the picture of is what is the outcome in a building that doesn't have a service coordinator, and what is the outcome in a building that does have a service
Well, let me
coordinator.
ask you this, just
Hmm.
so that we're on the same page in terms of the type of operator that we're talking about. So, in the case of HUD, I understand, I can see sort of how the logic would go, right? But in terms of, I don't know, let's say a private entity that is investing in affordable housing, as far as they're concerned, there is a whole long list of a waiting list of folks, right? And so if somebody can't afford because of health and whatever, they don't care, I'm not going to be cruel, but in terms of
No.
business wise, right? There is plenty of supply, right? So they vacate because they had poor health. Who cares? I mean, the capitalists would say, right? And so why would the health of a resident, right, be something that this kind of an operator care about?
Yeah, that's the challenge. You know, it's
Yeah.
we have organizations that are mission centric, right?
Mm.
Nonprofit that do care, right? They do, and they care about the overall.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying for-profit capitalist organizations don't care, but you're right. There are bills to pay. There's money, there's investors that need to be paid, all of those things. And so, yeah, how do you get them to care? And in my mind, I don't think it's always on them. I think it's about
Mm.
who's reaping the benefit of somebody having a supportive person,
Mm.
building relationships, monitoring on the ground, boots on the ground, as we call it, what's happening with this collective group of individuals in this affordable housing unit, if it's a tax credit. And then I think that's who pays for
Mm.
the professional.
Mm.
So I'm thinking like the CMS of the world, right? Where Medicare, because most of our residents are older adults and they're on Medicare, a
Right.
lot of them are dually eligible. Medicare and Medicaid could help support these positions being in place. The hesitancy in all of that is we always want to maintain this program to be as it is and not turn it into a medical model. You know
Mm.
what I mean? We don't want service coordinators to be pushed out of their positions and be replaced by someone who can do blood sugar checks and blood pressure checks and all of these other things. It's a very social service type of position, and we want to make sure that it's maintained that way. We also want to maintain the presence of independent housing. So you start to cross a line when you provide too much collective or coordinated care within a building, and then you become an assisted living, right?
Mhm.
So it's about individual need and individual service delivery. And this one individual who has these relationships and connections within the community. It also helps build our community agencies. So you have organizations like your local area agency on aging, your food pantries, your food banks, your Meals on Wheels providers, all of those organizations, we are their primary customer, if you will, like our residents, right? And that's incredible. Versus in an assisted living, you have a kitchen and you have somebody who's making the food and all of those things. Our model allows for that independence to still be maintained on an individual level
Mhm.
versus the collective, and frankly, out of possibility, a lot of places, assisted living costs. I don't know if you're familiar with how much an assisted living cost is. There's no such thing, I don't think, in any state. I know in the state of Ohio, I can say very frankly, it is absolutely out of the realm of most people. There's no such thing as affordable assisted living. There's a few cases where HUD has supported assisted living environments, where individuals are subsidized, but there's very few projects like that. So if I wanted to move into, an assisted living where I'm only going to get a certain level of care, so I'm not getting around the clock care, I'm just getting support as I needed it. Most of us cannot afford that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so yeah. And then, so the next option is if you're not in affordable housing, you can't afford, your home, you can't afford your taxes, you're going to move into a nursing home. And most of us will run out of money. Nursing home care is extremely expensive. And if you go in with money, that's great. But unless you have planned really, really well, you're going to end up on your state Medicaid program. And Medicaid is going to foot the bill for all of us to have round the clock care, even if it's not necessary.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, wouldn't the folks at Medicare, Medicaid be receptive to these kinds of, calls to action from you?
We hope so. We hope so.
Yeah.
It's an interesting model because we have HUD that pays for this program, and
Mm,
I pray that they always pay for this program because it's so important. But as the program expands outside of HUD buildings,
mm.
that's where we're going to need the CMSs of the world
Yeah.
to step into. And it's difficult because Medicaid looks different in every state. Medicare doesn't reimburse for a lot of things Medicaid does. So, multiple conversations, but yes, that is the end goal that we would have CMS want to have an active role in supporting projects like this and with service coordinators within them.
Wonderful. So, there is a conference coming up at the end
Hmm.
this month, um, in Harbor, uh,
National Harbor,
National
Maryland, which
Harbor
is
in Maryland. We're gonna be
basically
there.
Washington, D.C.
Washington
Yep.
D.C. Woodlingo, our company will be there.
Yeah, I
Very
know. I'm
excited to,
excited.
very excited to attend. First time that we will be there. So, what is the goal of the conference beyond, of course, the very important goal of getting folks to gather together,
Yeah.
know that they are part of something big, bigger than themselves. They're not alone. But what is the what do you guys, if your three goals you want to accomplish
Yeah.
at the conference?
So every year we welcome roughly 1,000 service coordinators to a conference. This annual conference, the real premise of this conference is helping the service coordinators get their professional development education. So HUD, because on these positions, require a certain amount of continuing education, and so Ask really prides ourselves on providing that education. We do it throughout the year through webinars and other and on-demand courses, but the conference is the one, big event of the year where uh, individuals. But beyond that, it's what you just said. It's the networking. A service coordination is an extremely isolating role.
Mm,
So service coordinators are often the only person in the building who is doing the work of service coordination. So it's one person. They could be spread out across, miles and miles and miles before the next service coordinator is found. So they're often working very isolated. And so this conference is an opportunity for them to come together to network with each other, share with each other, and just be with people who understand their challenges.
yeah,
And so yeah, we get to celebrate them. Really, it's about celebrating the work that they do. Oftentimes, anytime you're in any time of direct service, it feels like it's kind of a thankless job. I mean, obviously the residents thank them, they appreciate them, but from the general, it can be a very difficult position. And so we just want to, you know, love on them, hug them, and make sure that they feel special and appreciated for the work that they do, but also provide them good education for the challenges that they face every day. I mean, there's things that most folks would not even think about would be a challenge, like bullying. That's a big
mm,
topic. Bullying within the properties and amongst the residents. Bed bugs is obviously something that our service coordinators deal with sometimes. Hoarding, mental health issues and challenges. I mean, all of these things, if you can imagine, 100 folks living in the same community, there's a lot of interesting dilemmas that you come up against that we could all talk hours for. And so the conference is a place where you commiserate with each other.
sure.
Like these are the challenges that I've had this past
Learn from
year.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited. 2 weeks.
Wonderful. Well, I know there's a lot of work that goes into getting those up and running. I know Nina is a great person, great help in that. Um, but Michelle Missler, thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah.
That's gone by fast. I have a million and one questions for you, but maybe I'll ask them when I see you on the end of the call.
Yes, please. I would love that. I would love that.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmad.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.